How many of you would rather, you would rather win than lose? Yeah. Amen? Amen? Yeah. Tonight, this morning, I want to speak to you about 5 rules for a victorious lifestyle. 5 rules for a victorious lifestyle. And I'm getting started on that. But before I do that, I want to read an old hymn to you. This hymn was written over 150 years ago, but it's still as exciting today as it was the day it was written. The title of this hymn, I Dare Not Be Defeated. I dare not be defeated. Now listen to this. I want to read it for you rather dramatically, okay? I dare not be defeated with Calvary in view, where Jesus conquered Satan, where all his foes he slew. Come, Lord, give me a vision, prepare me for the fight, make me an overcomer, clothed with the Spirit's might. I dare not be defeated, since Christ, my conquering King, has called me to the battle which he did surely win. Come, Lord, give me courage to battle for the right. Make me an overcomer, clothed with the Spirit's might. I dare not be defeated when Jesus leads me on to press through hellish legions to share with him the throne. Come, Lord, give your soldier the power to wield the sword. Make me an overcomer through your inerrant word. That word inerrant, it means it's always true. Nothing wrong. It's completely true. Your inerrant, truthful word. Last stanza. I dare not be defeated. Just at the setting of the sun, when Jesus waits to whisper, well done, beloved, well done. Lord, clothe me with the Spirit. Your power to me now send. Make me an overcomer, a victor to the end. Isn't that a great? And that's a great word, isn't it? All right. I was reared in a little church that knew a lot about the law, but very little about what you were singing about this morning, which was the grace and the mercy of the Lord, mercy of God. I had many struggles in my lifetime. My family was very poor. My mother and father fought and cursed each other like crazy people. My dad was a musician. He played the keyboards and the fiddle. My mother was an absolutely beautiful woman. They would go to the dances. My dad would play for the dances. They'd come home, and they'd begin to curse at each other with the vile words. I saw you rubbing up against that guy when you were dancing. I saw you making eyes at those girls. And they'd start cursing each other. And one night, when I was 6 years old up in northeast Louisiana, I saw my mother come out of a kitchen with a large butcher knife in her hand. And she said, tonight is the night that I kill you. And she cursed him. I'm going to kill you tonight. And she headed for him with this knife. Both of them had vicious, vicious tempers. And he took his hand and hit her in the jaw and knocked her back on the bed and wrestled the knife out of her hand. And I'm a little kid over in the corner screaming, my heart pounding. If I could have only known. If I could have only known in less than 1 year, everything was going to change with my parents and with me. One November night in 1932, I was about 3 months away from being 7 years old. My parents were gone, and I just presumed they'd gone to another dance where they had, you see, we didn't have any food. They served food at the dances. They'd come home and wake me up and say, here's what you have to eat. And I'd be eating at midnight. First bite I'd had all day. But this night they came home, and it did not take me long to discern that something different was happening. They started across a little courtyard where we lived in our little apartment, little 3-room apartment that we paid $7 a month for. And as we were walking across the courtyard, my dad said, we went to church tonight. Well, that was nothing new. My dad taught a lot of his musical classes in the church. And my mother said, we got saved tonight. I didn't know what that meant. I'd never heard that statement. And then my father said, our life is going to change. I knew what that meant. So we went to our little apartment. We went to bed. Nobody cursed anybody. Nobody said any bad words. We went to bed. Next morning we come to the breakfast table, and that was the time usually when the problem started. But in this morning, my dad took one of my little hands, and my mother took the other hand, and my father began to pray. He prayed for me. He prayed for my mother. He prayed for our church. I didn't even know where our church was. But the next Sunday morning, they took me to Sunday school. First time in my life. I'm almost 7 years old, but it's the first time in my life I'd ever been to Sunday school. And I sat by 7 other little boys on a bench, and one of their fathers was teaching the Sunday school class, and they gave me a little card with a picture of Jesus on it, and I took it like it was a treasure and took it home with me and saved it many, many months. And I would to God I could find it now, but it's gone. But the experience is not gone. And I sat by one of those young men. His name is Bill Keller, K-E-L-L-E-R. We grew up together. He's the person whom I had known the longest, longer than anybody else in the world. About 2 years ago, Bill Keller died. And his wonderful daughter, Candace Keller, is like my goddaughter. She and Cindy are close friends. Candace is a medical doctor. She's an anesthesiologist, and she taught in the medical school in Jackson, Mississippi. She's now retired. And Bill Keller and I just grew up together. And one night, quite a few years ago, I was flying into Memphis, Tennessee. And I'm looking out the window of the plane as we're approaching our airport. I was praying about the meeting, praying for the ministers who would be there, praying for myself. You know, I usually pray, oh God, help me to help your people. Suddenly, without any warning, the Spirit of God spoke to me and asked me this question: how did you survive? And it took me by surprise. What? How did you survive? Which I did. I went through times with no money, times when just looked like nothing was going to be right. Started to work when I was 13 years old. From the time I was 14 years old, I worked a 40-hour week and went to school until the day I graduated from high school. I obviously had attention deficit syndrome. I didn't even learn to read until I was almost in the 3rd grade. I couldn't remember anything. My mother would sit down at night and she would drill me about my lessons for the next day. And one night she spent 2.5 hours with me, and we were going to have a 10-question test the next day. And she drilled me on that material, and when I came home, I got 1 out of 10, right? I made 10%. She said, Charles, won't you ever be able to learn anything? Won't you ever be able to remember anything? I conquered that. I found out when God asks you a question, if you are really smart, you will ask Him to answer the question. They asked in the book of Ezekiel, can these bones live? He said, Lord, you know, can they? So they could, and God told him what to do. I said, Lord, tell me, how did I survive? Why am I victorious? Why are all of these hundreds and hundreds of pastors traveling from all over America to hear me tonight? What did I do to create such a situation? And God said to me, I'm going to give you 5 rules that I want you to preach tonight. And here, I thought I had my message ready. I said, now God, it's not very long until tonight. God said, yeah, but I'm going to give them to you. And he gave them to me. And I'm going to give those rules to you today. Are you ready? To grow in God, to come to maturity, to be victorious, to fulfill your dreams. Number 1, we must come to know God is a good God. The first thing that we need to know to be victorious, God is a good God. The fact that we go through tests, that we have trials, that we get mistreated, this does not mean that God is unfair. This does not mean that God does not love us. And I consider the example of Joseph. I gave you part of this last night, but this is in a different realm. He was sold into slavery, put in prison, treated with cruelty. Yes, but God delivered him, and he became the governor over all of Egypt. And his brothers came and knelt before him, scared half to death. And in Genesis chapter 50, verse 18, 19, and 20, his brothers also went and fell down before his face. And they said, Behold, we are your servants. That was Joseph's dream, you know. Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? He said, but as for you, when he finally revealed himself, who he was, he said, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. And he explains why. He said, God put me through all of that. God put me in the pit. He put me in prison. He put me in Potiphar's house. And he brought me to the throne where I am now. God did all of this in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Here he is down in Egypt. These people don't know anything about God. They don't know anything about what they ought to know, but God, who is a good God, is reaching out and touching them. He said to Abraham, you're going to bless many, many people of the world. And here they are down in Egypt, and Joseph has become a great, wonderful blessing. You see, Jesus came to this world, and if you ask some kid, what do you know about Jesus? He died on the cross. They think about a dead Jesus. But Jesus came to do more than that. It's wonderful that he died. He who knew no sin became sin for us, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. But Jesus also came to reveal this good God. It was Peter, when he was testifying to the household of Cornelius, he said in Acts chapter 10, verse 38, he said, God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Ghost and with power, who went about doing good. He didn't go about doing religious. He went about doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the devil, for God was with him.